On today's episode of the Fresh Brew Run Club, my breakdown and first run reaction of the New Balance 1080 V15. Welcome to the Fresh Brew Run Club. My name is Aaron, and I am back with a shoe review. Very excited about this one. I have a little bit of history with this shoe, and that is the New Balance 1080 V15. So if you've watched my YouTube channel for a few years, you know that I did review the V13 a couple years ago. Not my favorite shoe of all time. I was fresh off of the New Balance More V4, which I would say is my favorite running shoe. The 1080 came out. They had a redesigned Fresh Foam X Foam midsole, and I said I gotta try this thing. Well, after about 50 miles, I said, not for me, and this shoe went back on the shelf, and I never ran in it again. It was unstable, the foam was too soft, and it just didn't feel super comfortable when I was out on the run. So I skipped the V14, and then the V15 was announced as an all-new, totally redesigned shoe. They got rid of that Fresh Foam X Foam and replaced it with a new foam called Infinion, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Fresh Foam X is out of here. Infinion is in this midsole. So I am excited about this shoe. So today I'm going to give a quick breakdown from bottom to top, and then I'm going to go out for about a 6 to 8 mile run just to give an initial run review of this shoe. So let's dive into the breakdown. So this outsole has 3 different pieces of outsole rubber. There's a piece in the forefoot, and then there's 2 pieces of outsole rubber in the heel. In the middle of the foot, this is the midsole foam, exposed midsole foam, but there's like a little bit of a traction design. So that's putting a lot of trust in the durability of that midsole foam, because I imagine it's going to be making a decent amount of contact with the ground depending on how your foot hits the ground and how you push off in your stride. As far as width goes, I would say this is a medium width shoe. I wouldn't say that this is a wide outsole. I also wouldn't say it's narrow. It's just kind of in the middle, which I like. And then jumping up to the midsole, and I think that is the main selling point of this shoe. Like I said, it's the Infinion midsole. Doing a cursory glance at the New Balance website, the first main feature they talk about when it comes to this midsole is the durability. They literally mention that shoes over time start to lose their spring or their cushion. The foam starts to break down, and apparently this midsole material is meant to counter that and give you a long-lasting, durable shoe. So excited to see how that develops over time. I try to get at least 300 miles in all of my shoes, and I'll make a 300-mile review if I get to that point, if I don't throw these back on the shelf next to the 1080 V13s. I'll make that 300-mile review to see how did these shoes hold up. I want to get my money's worth out of this shoe. Now, they also tossed in a lot of terms that you see with a more cushioned shoe like the 1080 about bounce and energy return and cushioning, just kind of the standard terms to describe what a cushioned daily trainer type of shoe is going to have in that midsole foam. Otherwise, I didn't get a lot of info on the New Balance website about what is this Infinion foam, how exactly is it different than the Fresh Foam X foam. Personally, I loved the old version of the Fresh Foam X. Like I said, the New Balance More V4, my favorite running shoe of all time. I thought that version of the foam was the perfect mix of cushion, but also a little bit of firmness and durability. I felt like the new version that was in the V13, the 1080 V13, was a little too soft. So this, just feeling it, feels like it kind of swings the pendulum back to a little more firmer, a little more stable side of the foam softness pendulum that I've just invented. But off the bat, it just feels a little less squishy and pillowy compared to the V13, which uses that Fresh Foam X foam. So moving up to the upper, couple things I want to point out. It does look like there's some decent holes in the upper for breathability. A nice padded heel collar to give you hopefully some good lockdown. The tongue is gusseted, which means it's attached to the shoe. So I really like that. It means the tongue is not going to slide around. You know, when you're out running some hard miles, sometimes that tongue can kind of slide to the side of the shoe. This tongue is going nowhere, and I really like that. Pretty standard laces. I think this is New Balance's just standard lace. And then finally, the design of this shoe. I care a lot about the design. I know it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. As far as this shoe goes, it's fine. I guess. Like, there really isn't a whole lot going on. There's like some design in the midsole. I like the colorway, this like tennis ball green. I like a good lime green, volt green, tennis ball green type of shoe But the design, I don't know. There's like not a whole lot going on with this shoe. So that is a breakdown of the New Balance 1080 V15. We can talk about tennis ball green all day long, but what really matters is how they feel out on the run. So like I said, I'm gonna go on a 6 to 8 mile run, and about halfway through that run, I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna set up my camera and just give my thoughts of what it's like to run in this shoe. Just my first reaction. I am going to go to bed, get a good night's sleep, get up early in the morning, and then lace these shoes up and go for a run and give my thoughts on the New Balance 1080 V15. I'll see you out there in a second. All right, I have about 4 miles down. Honestly, oh, my light just got shut. What is going on? That's devastating for this video. We just have a power outage? All right, so yeah, look, a big part of running is responding to adversity. You encounter adversity, you respond, you react, you adjust, and then you move forward. There's gonna be all kinds of obstacles in your way. So whether it is, you know, a rainy day on race day, maybe you didn't get a good night's sleep, or maybe you're trying to film a shoe review and there's a power outage at the place where you normally film your shoe reviews, you just gotta adjust. So here's the deal. I said I was gonna do a review after my first run. This is like my 5th run in these shoes. I filmed the initial part very early. I actually did film a quick recap after my first run, but since then things have changed with these shoes and I want to reshoot this segment here. I have about 30 miles on these shoes, and there is something that I've noticed with these shoes that I want to point out. But first, let's just start with the basics. I do want to drop a couple stats that I think are relevant, but I don't focus too much on them in my first run. I just want to get a sense of the feel of this shoe. These are a roomy shoe, and honestly, I've been thinking about this a lot. Should I have sized down? Maybe, I don't know. I do like a little bit of room in the shoe because when you run, your foot expands and you want a little room for that expansion. They're right on the borderline. I would say no. They're roomy and I have to tighten the laces a little bit, but they're not sliding around. But just know these run a little bit bigger. So if you're kind of on the line where you sometimes size down and sometimes don't, you probably do want to size down. I usually always run in a 10. So I got a 10. I think a 10 is okay, but they are a little bit roomy. Quick editor's note, this is what I was trying to say, and I wish I would have worded it better in real time. The shoes are long, okay? They're a long shoe, so there's a lot of room in the length of the toe box, but they're kind of narrow. So I wouldn't size down because I would be too afraid that the shoe would be too narrow, but at the same time, the shoes do run a little bit long. So it's kind of an interesting shape. I think this is going to come into play when I talk about my complaint with this shoe a little bit later in the video. So keep watching, we'll get to that. I think all these things are related. Anyway, back to the video. Now, I talked a lot about the midsole foam. The midsole foam is great. It is absolutely a big improvement over the V13. Like I said, I don't know what the V14 was all about, but it is definitely an upgrade over the V13. It's much more firm. It's much more responsive. You can feel the ground beneath your feet, but it's also stable. Like, I don't feel like it's unstable. It's not too squishy. I'm thinking about implementing a new foam rating system on a scale of wetness to dryness, where like a wet foam is a really soft, squishy, spongy foam that doesn't really hold its shape very much. The V13 would be a wet foam, and then a dry foam is something that's like more crisp. You know, it is a little bit firmer, it's drier. If you were to rip dry foam apart, it would like crumble. I think the Alphafly 3 is a very dry foam. These are more on the drier side of my newly invented foam scale, somewhere between like a neutral and like a really dry. I'm thinking of this like a pendulum, if this analogy makes any sense. But I like it. I think it is a good upgrade. It's definitely not like a recovery shoe. I wouldn't say these are a max cushion shoe. I don't think New Balance is saying these are a max cushion shoe. There's something I would take out on like easy runs. So if you're looking for like a daily trainer that has a little more cushioning, but the cushioning is on the more responsive side, I think this is a good option. Now, let's get into what I've noticed over the course of 5 runs. The first run was fine, not a big issue, but a couple runs later, I have noticed something with the upper. I think I just described the upper as like a standard upper, like there was nothing really too special about it. I actually think this is not a very good upper. There just isn't much form to it. It just doesn't hold the structure of the shoe together very well, in my opinion. And when I'm running and when I'm like pushing off, it like really creases in a strange way into the top of my shoe. I don't know, just there's not like a whole lot of structure, I would say, to the upper, which is kind of a negative. Like the second and third run in these shoes, it was very annoying. I think maybe I'm getting used to it after like 4 or 5 runs, so it's good that I did this multi-run review. But I'm not a big fan of this upper. It just does not hold the shoe together in a way that I like. But otherwise, everything is pretty good. Good heel lock, you know, my heel isn't slipping around. Good traction. And as far as pace goes, like I said, I think these are good for like daily training type of runs. I did pick up the pace. I got down to my marathon pace. They're fine. They're not like a fast shoe by any means, but like I said, they're not a recovery run shoe. They're not a slow shoe. My feet aren't like sinking into the foam where I'm like fighting against them to pick up the pace. So you can pick up the pace. I just wouldn't want to use these for like speed workouts or tempo runs or faster pace runs. So overall, interesting shoe. I don't do ratings after my first review of the shoe. I think I do need to get a lot more miles in these. I want to make a 100-mile review of this shoe, but so far, I don't know, kind of mixed results. I like the foam. I think it's a major upgrade over the V13 and probably over the V14. The upper, not great, just not a whole lot to it, and it's kind of bending in a weird way that I think you can see in the slow motion footage in this video. So we'll see. I'll keep running in this shoe. Am I blown away by it? Not yet. Is it a terrible shoe that I'm going to put on the shelf and never run in again? No, I'm going to keep running in this. I definitely plan on making that 100-mile review, so subscribe so you don't miss that video. But that'll be it for today. So let me know, have you run in this shoe? What do you think? Did you experience some of the same things I did with the foam and also with the upper? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll also do my best to answer any questions that you might have. But that'll be the video for today. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you soon.